Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. Pam Zukowski, I'm the Programming Outreach Manager for the Tinley Park Public Library. Tonight's program is Discover Orland Grassland, and I have here with me our presenter is Pat Hayes. Pat Hayes has been the volunteer site steward at Orland Grassland since the restoration plan began in 2002. She's certified by the Forest Preserves of Cook County. She served in many capacities, including plan implementation, collaborations with restoration partners, leading volunteers in restoration activities, and community outreach. The Orland Grassland comprises 1,000 acres filled with prairie uplands and swales, wetlands, oak savannas, shrubland, and woodlands. The site has evolved into a habitat recognized by the National Audubon Society as an important bird area. So tonight's presentation, Pat's going to go through. She wants it to be interactive. If you have any questions or comments, obviously we can't see or hear you. You can see and hear us. But if you would like to comment or ask a question, you can use either the chat box or the Q&A box. And as the questions come in, I will read them to Pat and she'll try and answer them for you. So sit back and enjoy, and I'll hand it over to Pat.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm always so happy and eager to be able to share what is going on at Orland Grassland, the beauty of Orland Grassland, and how it got to be what it is today. Our first part of the presentation, I'm actually going to give you some background. And we're going to go rather quickly, but I think it's necessary for you to appreciate the fullness and the success of our bird habitat and everything that goes with it, to understand the level of community involvement, the level of partnership that goes on with this. I'll say that someone once asked, well, when is the restoration going to be done? And 100 years from now, the restoration will be done. It's a long process, and it goes from one generation to the next. So it takes a long time to heal the lands and get them back to what the glorious way they were. So let's get going. So this is what a prairie really looks like. All of these pictures were taken at Orland Grassland. You can see that this is just a bouquet bursting with wildflowers, and that is what a prairie really looks like. It's not that empty lot at the end of the block that's just full of weeds and such. The things that are missing here, though, is this scene would be full of insects singing and birds calling, all kinds of wildlife humming about. So it would be rich and full and a glorious scene. But it didn't just happen. Back in 1952, this is what Orland Grassland looked like. This is all, you can see all the farms. All those lines are different farms. So drain tiles were put in so that the land would be dry enough to farm. We only in recent decades flipped over from being from not being primarily an agricultural culture. And so farming was the backbone of the economy. We purchased it, the Forest Preserve purchased it in the late 1960s. To give you an idea of how it's changed, in pre-settlement times, on the left-hand side, you see all that yellow? That was all that beautiful prairie that I showed you a picture of. If you look at it now on the right-hand side, that's the developed land. You can see that we've lost our prairie. Sadly, we've lost our prairie. We've lost a lot, as a matter of fact. So to have 1,000 acres that we can put back and be a supportive habitat for not just wonderful grassland birds that are endangered more than any other kind of species in North America, but it's also bringing back the important wildflowers that are needed to support them and the insects that they need. And, you know, it's all connected. This is soil mapping. We are at the end of a glacial moraine. And what that means is that glaciers came down and they stopped right about where we are, about 10,000 years ago. And those glaciers just pushed and pushed and pushed a lot of the soil down into us. So we have 13 different kinds of soil at Orland Grassland. This is the kind of stuff that is involved in the basics. They bought the land. We had the restoration project begin. The Army Corps came in 2009, and the Army Corps also had a phase 2 plan in 2011. Now, I don't know how many of you remember back to that time. We were coming out of the Great Recession at that time, and in order to spur the economy on, the White House, the administration at the time said, anybody who has a shovel-ready plan, we're going to give you extra money. And of course, we had a shovel-ready plan because our restoration plan was divided into 2 segments. So we had already started the first, and in came the Army Corps then to implement the second part. Now, when you heard that I was a certified steward, not just anybody can go out, although you may just feel compelled to go out and pull those weeds or help restoration in some way. You can't do it. You have to have somebody like me who leads the way and mentors and teaches and make sure that what is being done is what needs to be done. There's a plan that we have worked out that sort of dictates what we can do. We monitor for species and invasive control. We lead work days to clear and control these invasive species. We gather seeds. We distribute seeds in key areas, and we do outreach events like we're doing here tonight. So what do we need to do? We need to seed, seed, seed. And when I say seed, those seeds are gone because all the prairie's been gone. So it's hard to find them. We need native seeds. They're very, very, very expensive. We need to burn. I know, it's difficult to think in terms of fire now and with all the stuff going on out west, but prescribed burns are the best thing. Our native species, our native plants actually adapted and now thrive on fire for over those 10,000 years. So we have to keep that up. And plus it helps keep the invasive plants that are growing there, helps keep them back. We took out the drainage tiles, and we have to involve the community. Orland Grassland just recently was able to get a grant because of the level of community involvement that we have and community interest. We were designated an important bird area because we have Henslow sparrows primarily, and they are on serious, serious decline. So they have a habitat there, and we have other grassland birds there that are important and are in decline. And they included, because of the community support and interest at this site, we feel that it is appropriate to name it an important bird area. So if you aren't supporting the site, there are other sites that are being supported. And that is where the focus will go. If they think nobody cares, they'll shift their funding to places where people do care. So we have been very much supported, and it has paid off, not just in the work we've done and the hours that we've put in, and we are seeing wonderful results. It has actually paid off in the partnership support. These are some of our bad guys: teasel, buckthorn, reed canary grass, bird's foot trefoil, honeysuckle. These things are so aggressive, they will wipe out the habitat in the matter of just several years, a short time. So we have to get them out. Let me go back. I want to go back. I want to bring up one of the plants that we had an onslaught of just in the last couple years is called calorie pear. And in the landscape nurseries, it's known as a Bradford pear. And you can see them all over Orland. Orland is a rather new new community, has a lot of new subdivisions in it, new landscaping. And this was a darling tree. It comes out first in the spring with beautiful white flowers, and it takes a lot of abuse, salt on the roads and being planted in a subdivision landscape. Leaves stay on a long time, turn a nice pretty color in the fall, and it is a horror for us. We have already taken out thousands and thousands of these saplings. The way that it grows underground. It also is in a fruit tree kind of family, so it does spread seeds, and it is hard to remove it. And it came in unaware. You know, we were unaware that it was even there, and then when we finally found it underneath the other vegetation, the little saplings were getting, you know, maybe just this tall. There were tens of thousands of them. So if you have one of those and you want to swap it out, that would be a great thing. These are what our drain tiles look like. They were, you know, planted underground. They take the water from the soil and they fed it to the storm system. And so what is happening then, not only did we lose the hydrology, the natural hydrology of our land, we were feeding the storm sewers. And so that meant there was less room for houses and roads to feed the storm sewers. So it actually helps flooding situations when natural sites like ours can take that water and draw it down along the long roots of the prairie plants. They're 10 feet long, these and more sometimes, the roots of our prairie plants, and it just is like a highway to bring the water down into the subsoil and actually recreates the hydrology of the land, and in helping then to eliminate some of the water that goes into the storm systems. Prescribed burns, we need them. This is what and let me tell you, when you see these prescribed burns happening and you see these people out here, it's a very technical thing. We have to consider the heat, and we have to consider the humidity, and we have to consider the wind. And it all has to fall within a certain window. And if it's too hot, we can't burn. If it's too windy, we can't burn. If it's too much humidity, the smoke stays too far down on the ground. If it's no humidity, the smoke goes up and interferes with the airplanes. So we want the smoke to come up just perfect, go over the houses, go over the roads, not to cause any problems. So that's a very calculated event. And we watch the weather like hour by hour before we plan to ignite a prescribed burn. So on a larger scale, this is what happens when Orland Grassland gets burned. So you saw the picture of the city back there in the background, and now here's this glorious prairie. We can coexist. 1,000 acres is doing a remarkable, resplendent job of being a host and a habitat for all of these species. We don't need it all. We just need a piece. And here we are right in the middle of Orland Park and Tinley Park, and right next to one of the biggest urban areas in the country, Chicago, and we can coexist. It's not one or the other. We can have both. So here's some examples of volunteering. We have students from several different high schools here. They're cutting dogwood. This is Northwest Savannah with that pond in the back. Beautiful, beautiful. In the winter we build brush pile burns, and we cut down small trees. We are cutting down all kinds of trees. We do not want ash and locust and maple and all of the kinds of trees that were planted deliberately in there. They do not belong on a prairie. When we looked at the analysis of our site before the restoration first got started, there was no evidence of any woody substance in the subsoil. This was part of the Grand Prairie here. So we want to have some trees, bur oaks, white oaks, because they will come together to be a savanna, which is another endangered kind of habitat. But we want wide open prairie. These birds have to have wide open prairie. They nest in the grass, they nest on the ground. They have to have a lot of space so predators can't find them. We collect seeds. You can see lots of seeds there and the volunteers in the background going at it. Sometimes this is the only time we see some of our people. Some have their favorite season and they like to come out just for that. Others like me, they're all our favorite season. So, you know, we're out there all the time. Here's some seed gatherers. This is a little daisy troop that came out to help us one day. The cutest little thing was one of these girls said, now daisies, what are they, eight or nine, something like that. She goes, I'll never have to join a gym. I can just do this. This is wonderful exercise. And I thought, you're worried about joining a gym at 8 years old? I was just shocked, but she's absolutely right. It is so exhilarating, so physical, that you don't need a gym. You could get your exercise right here. So we also clean seeds. We come in and we have to scrape them on these boxes and let the seeds get them away from the chaff. And here's a great line of us distributing the seed. We do outreach events. And what good does that do us? All of this work that we do, we get pectoral sandpipers. We get eastern meadowlarks, bobolinks, dickcissels. Here we have a ruby-throated hummingbird at a cardinal flower. There it is up close. Everybody was quite excited when that picture came in. A silver-spotted skipper on a rough blazing star. A meadow fritillary. Here we have a monarch roost. We had 7 of them one year, of roosts just like this, where they would come in. Actually, this picture was taken around noon, around 11 o'clock, so they weren't coming in at dusk. It was quite a remarkable year for monarchs that year. Ruby meadowhawk dragonfly and coyotes and a white-tailed deer. And I want to tell you a little bit about the white-tailed deer. The white-tailed deer love the prairie. You know, they love the meadow. That's where they feast. In fact, they eat our most precious high conservative value plants that we are putting in. They go right to them. That's where they put their babies. When they have their babies, they drop them into the tall grass because they're so hidden in that tall grass. So when people are concerned that when we were cutting down the trees, what are the deer going to do? The deer were jumping for joy. This is their natural environment. They'll go into the trees. There are some savannas out there, some trees around the edges, wooded areas. They're just fine. And to be honest, we don't want too many of them. Too many deer is not a good thing. They start, you know, jumping out into the roads. They eat like goats. They're eating everything down to nothing. So you know what it would be like to have a deer in your landscape. We get too many deer and we've got the same problem. We have painted turtles. Here's some of our favorite our prairie wildflowers. This purple prairie clover, that orange tip you see, it actually just kind of glistens like it's been brushed in gold. It is just an amazing, amazing wildflower. It's one of my favorites. And creamy gentian, pale purple coneflower, hoary puccoon, lead plant, lady's tresses. You don't see these all over the place. You don't see them hardly ever. But when I took a road trip to Indiana to visit a site down there that was being restored, and this was in a very remote rural area of Indiana, I saw some of these things growing along the roadside. So at one time, these kinds of wildflowers were so common, and now they are uncommon. So they're doing well in coming back at Orland Grassland. These are some of our grasses, Indian grass, prairie dropseed, little and big blue stem. They're very important, iconic grasses. So as I showed you, a real prairie looks like this, and it looks like this. And it looks like this in the early morning. There is nothing more beautiful than to see this mist laying on top of the wildflowers early in the morning. That there hasn't been some accident on the Grange Road as people have been driving by and be captured by this scene. It astounds me, because certainly I've had to keep myself under control when I've driven by there. Looks like this. This is it at dusk. And here's the new face of Orland Grassland. This is just a map that I drew. People wanted to know about where was Prairie Pass Pond or Hideaway Swale or all of the places that we refer to in our Facebook page and in our e-newsletter. So I drew it, and it's got a little bit of artistic liberty here, but it does give you a general idea. The yellow means that it's very high there. Bobolink Hill that you see in the lower right-hand side, that's one of the highest in the Cook County, is right there in that spot. That's what the glaciers did. They created this rolling upland, and it's just beautiful in the prairie. We like for people to volunteer, and you can get a certificate of participation for your hours. It's been a little bumpy these last months because we haven't been able to have a general public workday. It's only been our core volunteers. We've just now opened the site up again at the district so that you can sign up to volunteer, but you have to wear a mask. We have to make sure you don't share tools. We can't bring treats. We used to always bring treats, but we can't. You bring your own snack and your own water. So we're being very conscious and careful about COVID, but now the public can start coming in, not in groups, you know, maybe a couple, you know, a small family or a couple, or maybe, you know, a college student, or maybe somebody who's retired, or, you know, I'm talking individuals or small, a very small group. But we can't do the schools yet. We can't do the big groups yet. So what can you do? You can volunteer. Eventually, when we get past COVID, you can do it now individually, but organizations, companies, schools, not quite yet. Here is our website address, and if you want to contact me, and you go on the website and there's a contact tab, that's me. So just, you know, let me know. Hi, I heard your presentation, and I want to come out and I want to help you guys. You know, we would be happy to help you. Okay, so this is a good place for me to pause and ask if you have any questions. Does anybody out there have any questions or anything they want to talk about real quick? I'm going to skip to another segment of the presentation.
Pat, there was one question. What kind of seeds are you planting?
What kind of seeds?
Mm-hmm.
Right now we plant the seeds that we collect. They are native seeds on a range of conservative value. So we're going to plant gray-headed coneflower. We're going to plant pestamine, obedient plant, prairie dropseed, little blue stem, gentian if we can get to it before the deer. The blazing stars, we've got 5 different kinds of blazing stars out there. We have plants of concern out there that are sort of secret, but we know where they are, and we will take the seeds so we can get them dispersed around the site. So we are looking for native seed that we have on site. Now, when we get money, if we get a grant, we can purchase seed, but we need like $10,000 to purchase seed that's going to get us anywhere out there. And we will still make a matrix of certain wildflowers and grasses, because think of them as building, you know, that we are building. It's important not just because they're pretty, but because they actually form the structure that form the habitat that our grassland birds can thrive in. Okay?
Also,
right.
is there any rhyme or reason to the way that you put the seeds out? Is it, or is it just a mixture, or do you plant, you know, put them
Yeah,
in specific
we
areas?
separate the seeds out into several categories. Upland, which is very dry, then mesic, which is in the middle, and that's a wide range. If you think of a slope, the very top is always very dry, so only certain seeds will grow there. Then you have a wider area that is for a little more, you know, forgiving, and they can take a little dry and a little wetter. Then at the bottom of the slope, it's called wet mesic, and that the plants that grow there have to have the amount of moisture that accumulates at the bottom of the slope. It's not a swale, it's not like a wetland, it's just the bottom of the slope where all the water has drained down and has kept that bottom wetter longer. So we divide it like that. Then we divide our seeds into two kinds of, further, we want our highest conservative value seeds to go into our remnants, and we want the broader conservative value to go in the areas outside of our remnants so we can bring them along and start creating bigger remnants. So yes, there is a strategy that goes, and it goes a lot better when you have more seed. You know, when you have few seed, you have fewer choices. So.
Okay. We have someone who just said, my 20-year-old daughter just came back from jogging around Orland's Grasslands. I rode my bike there yesterday.
Well, that's terrific. There's something for everyone there. But I will tell you, if you really want to experience a prairie wilderness, then get off your bike and get off the bike trail and walk in on one of our footpaths. That's where you're going to see the grasshoppers leading you along, and you're gonna have butterflies, you know, all kinds of butterflies and skippers just flying about you. You might have a garter snake that crosses your path, crayfish, you'll see those little volcanic holes that they dig. If it's particularly wet, they like to come up for air, I think, but you'll see them do their claws and everything. So you really get to experience what is going on out there, where everything is depending on everything else. And of course, you're going to hear all the birds and see birds. And if you go on those footpaths, please bring some binoculars so that you can see them, because it just opens up the world to you if you can see the birds through binoculars.
Right. Another question, what are the trail conditions? Are there any areas that are easily flooded?
Well, there is Birdsong Trail, that is our longest trail, and it takes probably, depending on how you walk, it takes probably, well, an hour and a half. I think it's 2.5 miles. We measured it. That's pretty good. If you cut off very early on, there's a fork when you go out, and you take the fork to the left. That's called Prairie Swale Trail. And if it's wet conditions, it's going to be squishy. You probably can still get through it. We've tried to get around the swales as best we can, but you might not want to wear your best shoes on that trail. If you go down in the southwest corner, there's a savanna trail. And it is a delightful trail. It gives you a little bit of every ecosystem, a wonderful vista view when you get up on top of the hill there, and it takes about a half hour. So it's a quick little hike, depending on how you make it, but you're going to experience a pond, the upland, a savanna. It's going to be a very nice trail, and that doesn't get wet. That stays pretty dry.
One more question. Dogs are not allowed, but I have seen their waste on the trail. How can that be controlled?
Dogs are allowed as long as they are on a leash. So as long as you keep them leashed on the bike trail or on the footpath, they have to be on a leash. A lot of people think that when they go out onto the footpath, they're out in nature, and dogs are a part of nature, and my dog's not going to run away, you know, so they take them off their leash so they can kind of run and snoop around and stuff like that. The problem is, if these dogs And they are, you know, they're dogs. If they get a chase after a bird, remember our grassland birds' nests are on the ground, and they chase a bird off its nest, that bird may not come back. So that is going to be a season of young babies that won't hatch. They'll be abandoned. So you have to keep your dogs on a leash. Now, as far as the waste, you know, there's nothing you can do about public respect. People either respect that they have to pick up after their dogs or they don't. You know, it would be impossible. We have trail watchers, and they may kindly suggest and mention, you know, to pick up the waste after your dogs, but the Forest Preserve District does not. You know, they have a lot of trails, nor do they snowplow. All right, it's nature is as nature does. So if it snows, then the trail is going to be full of snow. Okay.
Do you want to take a few more questions?
I'm happy to take a few more.
Here's a comment. Lisa says she loves the Orland Grassland, but the last time she was there, she and her dog were trailed for a long time by a coyote. I was quite frightened by the experience. Luckily, a jogger came by and started waving his arms and yelling at the coyote, and it eventually left us alone, but she hasn't been back since then.
Yeah, you know, I've heard of that. I've never experienced it myself. Sometimes coyotes will be a little bit more protective, or let me say assertive, but I don't mean that in an attack way, you know, but I mean that they may follow if it's their denning season. So if you happen to be jogging by or walking through where a coyote has their den, where their young is there, they're very protective at that point of their den. So that may have had something to do with it, depending on the season that they were there. Typically, I mean, I'm out there twice a week, and we don't have a problem with the coyotes.
Okay. Jim asks, what are your thoughts on retention ponds? We have herons, egrets, cormorants, terns, etc. Do you support rock riprap or tall grass?
Well, I support a native environment, a native habitat. What you're going to get with your native habitat is, you know, you have those birds, and that's nice, right? That's a nice thing. But that is so few. That's so few of what our area has accommodated earlier on, because now that it's lost its habitat, it can no longer do that. So when you have a native landscape, you're also going to have, as part of your viewing pleasure, let's say that, you are going to have probably more kinds of birds, but you're also going to have many, many more butterflies, many other species that are related to the native habitat that is going to actually provide an enriching experience. And not to mention, you know, the beautiful wildflowers that come along with it. So I would say that, you know, a native landscape is much more desirable. Now, does it mean the whole thing has to be native landscaped? Maybe you can just cut, you know, a peekaboo here and there if that's, you know, what you're thinking. It, you know, would be to your liking. But, you know, definitely a native landscape is going to be more enriching.
Okay, that looks like all the questions for the moment.
Okay. So let me just take you to this bird's eye view. Let me switch over real quick. And I want to take you over to here. So here we are out in Orland Grassland. And we are in the, we're at the top of the hill. When you first go out there, you're going to think this is the middle. It looks like it's in the middle of the site. It's not. This is 1/3 of the way down. All right, that's how big an expanse we're dealing with. So when you talk about the different ecosystems out there, you know, what is a grassland? A grassland, these were obviously taken in the early spring before everything started blooming. But the pictures that I showed you, this is going to be what a grassland looks like. They have fertile soils. They're dominated by grasses, sedges, and rushes, and wildflowers. And Chicago area prairies or tall grass prairies are known for their diverse array of wildflowers. There is only 0.001 in the state of Illinois left of prairie, and we're the prairie state. So it's gone, it's vanishing. One of the birds, the Henslow sparrow that I talked to you about before, is this one. A tiny little bird. It has a tiny little sound. Let me turn it on for you. So if you hear that little chirp, 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 that was our $1 million baby. That is the one that got us the important bird area designation. You know, we have the others. We have dick sisel, we have bobolinks, we have the others that I showed you, but Henslow sparrow is in severe decline. And what does Quadakeek also have? Where's my volunteers? There they are. So that's me on the right, and one of our volunteers on the left. We're using scythes, and we're cutting down tall goldenrod. Tall goldenrod is a native plant, but when it gets its foothold in a degraded area, the roots actually have a bit of a poison to them. And if there is not a lot of native competition, they will take over. So what we do is we scythe it down, and then we seed into it with native seed. And then the tall goldenrod will play nice with the other plants. But otherwise, you know, with degraded areas, it's going to just take over. So we don't like that when it happens. All right, so let's see, what else can I show you here? Oh, we don't want that. Back to Quadakeek. Sometimes this application will hang up, I'm sorry to say. And that's what's happening here. I'm trying to get you down to earth here. We're up in the prairie sky. Okay. So this is one of the footpaths. This is Birdsong Trail footpath that I was telling you about. So you can see here, we mow this twice a year, and that's all we do. It's not mulched, it's not graveled, it's just the natural vegetation that's mowed. So you really, it's really not good for wheelchairs or strollers. That's, you know, you want to be a little bit steady on your feet. The ground is going to be uneven, but you are going to be immersed into nature such as this.
Pat, we do have a question. Are the hours dawn till dusk?
Yes. Yes. There's our beautiful prairie sky. There are places along our paths, our footpaths. I always tell people, make sure that when you're walking along, that you stop for a moment and look over your shoulder. There are going to be places where you do not see any trees, you do not see any buildings, any wires, any sign of civilization. You're going to feel like you are out in the millions of acres of the tall grass prairie that once was. I've had people tell me that they feel like they're in South Dakota or someplace far away. Other people have said, grandparents who bring their grandchildren out, they have said to me, I can remember this kind of scene here when I was a kid, and I haven't smelled this in forever. And I said, well, what is it that you're smelling? And I thought maybe it was the bergamot, you know, one of the wildflowers that are, that would have been pretty prevalent back in the day. And he said, no. He said, it's fresh air. He goes, I haven't had the smell of fresh air since I was a kid. And it triggered a memory for him. So that's what it means when you can have a native landscape and you can bring back all of those species that comprise that landscape. You get to see things and hear seeing things that you haven't, and experiences you haven't had before. So it is truly, this place is a treasure. It is a treasure for our communities to have it right here. People come from, I had somebody from New York was here, and he said, he was a birder and a photographer, and he said, I have photographed all these birds and I've never been able to get a Henslow sparrow. And we were on the footpath and I said, well, there's one right there. You can almost reach out and touch it. And he was just delighted. He couldn't believe it. So, people come from far and wide for these experiences because these birds are indeed rare.
One more question. Are all the footpaths marked?
Okay, they are. And when you go to the site and you look at one of the big Forest Preserve District kiosks, you'll see the dotted lines, and that's kind of like, that's the trail. But one year we had a Cub Scout troop come out. They were looking for a project. And so we gathered, I went to a junkyard and I got a whole bunch of, bent up used license plates and brought them back, and they pounded them out and we sprayed them with yellow, bright, primary yellow, primary blue, and primary red colors. And they drew a pictures, what they thought bird songs would be doing, and prairie swale, they put the name prairie swale, and then they put Savannah Trail, and we mounted them on T-bar fence posts. So they line, I don't want to say they line because they are few and far between, but you can see them from a distance. And I remember the Forest Preserve District called me and they said, Pat, why did you paint those primary colors? Why didn't you use the colors that we have on our kiosk, right? They had muted brown, dull green, and maybe a red that was more burgundy, right? I said, nobody's gonna see those in a tall grass prairie. The color won't come through, you'll be out there and you don't know if you're gonna follow a deer trail or the footpath. So we have to have these bright colors in order for people to be able to see them from a distance. And they never bothered me again about those signs.
Another question, is there a reason why there are so few garbage cans?
I do not know. And if wanting more garbage cans is desirable, I suppose I could put in a word that more garbage cans would be appreciated out there. I do know that there is, I know we have dog situations, right, where you want to be able to deposit that stuff. But also it's not a bad idea that if you carry it in, carry it out. Some of our most precious national parks and resources, that's the norm. Carry it in, you carry it out. But if there is a need for more garbage cans, I mean, I had to fight for the porta potties out there. And finally they relented and they gave us the one that's down at 175th. So now we have 2. So I'll see what they say about more garbage cans.
Someone, I don't know if you, someone says, how about another porta potty? There's only 1 at the parking lot. I don't know if you just answered that. You said you have 2 now?
There's 1 at the parking lot. There's one on 104th and old 175th Street. That is an old farm road. We actually call it Farm Road Trail now. It's not navigable and you are not supposed to take your bikes down it. But right there where the trail and 104th on the west side of the site, there's a porta potty there. Sometimes they take that one away and then everybody complains, and then they bring back. So it's back, I think. I haven't been out there for about 3 weeks. I was away for 3 weeks, so I don't know, but it's been there for a bit. Are there any other questions?
One more benches to rest.
More benches to rest. Yeah, yeah, that too. Garbage cans, let me see, garbage cans and benches.
You
What
guys have
you will not see out there, what you will not see out there are more picnic tables. The idea is that this is a wilderness area, not a picnic area. And we don't want to encourage that. We want people, although you can go off the footpath, I don't recommend it because, you know, there are some small ravines in there. The terrain can change rather quickly and you're not going to be aware of it. And the tall grass hides that stuff. So if you, and our birds are nesting there. But if you are one who is knowledgeable about that kind of wandering, then it's open for you to do that. But I would say if you're not, you can get a lot of enjoyment by staying on the footpath. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions or comments at the moment.
Okay. Well, I am so grateful that you had me visit with you today. And I told you how to get in touch with us if you want to become a volunteer on a regular basis, on a sporadic basis. We take all the helping hands that we can get. So I hope to hear from you all.
Great. If anyone has anything else they want to comment on, please put it in the Q&A. I would just like to say thank you, Pat. This has been really delightful. I have never been there. I drive by there all the time on my way to work.
Yes.
I take different routes just so I can drive around it. And I always swear I'm going to come back on the weekend and, you know, take a walk there. Someone says, thank you so much. We love Orland Grasslands. This is great.
Yeah.
We wanted to do a program there at the library, but as you said, we have to wait it out until maybe next summer. We'll be at the point where we can do a program.
And you know, we're always open. Maybe next summer, you know, when we get past this, and we will. But you know, it would be great to organize, you know, a walk through the grassland, through the library. That would be a delightful thing to do. So we can.
We would love it. We have a little prairie, restored prairie around the library, as you know.
Oh, right.
But it's nothing compared to Orland Grassland.
Right, yeah.
Jim
well,
says
I tell people that, you know, we have all these wonderful species. We have this wonderful, you know, collection of wildflowers that they are endangered as well. The birds that are endangered as well. But one of the attributes that Orland Grassland has is the fact that it's wide open space at 1,000 acres. You don't get that anymore. You don't find that, and that so contributes to the ability to have a collection of ecosystems. We're prairie, we are wetland, we are shrubland, we are savanna, we've got oak woodlands. It is big enough that we can accommodate all that there. And it's so unusual to find it. Just open space is, you know, imperiled, endangered. So we're very, very fortunate, very lucky.
we have a comment. It's a beautiful area. Thank you for all that you do.
Well, I'm happy to do it. Trust me, it makes my heart sing, but thank you too for appreciating it.
All right. Oh, and one other question. Why is the parking lot not paved?
I don't know. Actually, we're happier to have it not be paved because, you know, pavement covers up stuff, but it may be that it's just cheaper, perhaps. when I first started there was no parking lot there. And so people were very happy to think that there was that, you know, that parking lot there that they ultimately got. I know in a lot of other places, and even in Orland Grassland South, which is south of 179, and 104th runs on the west side of it. It's probably 169 acres. It has a huge parking lot compared to what Orland Grassland has. And it's paved. And it is a wonderful place to go birding there. They are finding that it's more wet there, so you want to stay on the path. But it is attracting birds that haven't been around in decades and decades. So it's a remarkable place on its own.
Yes, the gravel lot gets messy in the car. That's what
Yes.
someone says.
Yes. Well, you should see my car. I have a wonderful, supportive husband.
All right. Well, Pat, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you coming. We would love to arrange something, maybe a nature walk.
It would be terrific.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So yeah, in the meantime, everybody get out and enjoy Orland Grassland while we have this lovely weather, beautiful fall. I guess all year round you can go out there.
You can go out there all year round, and I'll tell you, if you take that bike ride all around the perimeter of the site, it's 5.5 miles. And don't think it's flat. You're going to have some oomph getting up some of those hills.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming out, everyone. Okay. It's been great. So enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.